But that kind of misinformation gets out there. And whether it's perpetrated by a politician or someone you think is of someone of note and authority, it is wrong and it is bull and it cannot be tolerated.
During a recent interview with President Biden's Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, Fox News host Neil Cavuto had a serious and somber rebuke of Donald Trump and disinformation and misinformation being spread about Hurricane Helene, which, whether he likes it or not, would also include his own damn network. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a clip to play here. It's towards the end of an interview between Neil Cavuto, a Fox News and Fox Business host, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and it's about the federal government's response to Hurricanes Helene and Milton. As you know, Donald Trump, MAGA Republicans, and quite frankly, the Fox Propaganda Network, Cavuto's very own employers, have been signal boosting and exacerbating dis and misinformation about these hurricanes and the federal government's response in order to cynically gain political points. Cavuto seems very fed up with it, very disgusted, and he called it out. He didn't mention Fox by name, but again, it's pretty clear who he was talking about. And he did explicitly call out Donald Trump.
We get a lot of misinformation, don't we? We get people who say in North Carolina that if you're a Republican, you're not going to get help. If you're a Democrat, you'll get help. I would imagine that does a huge disservice to people working together and scares the bejesus out of others when they believe it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I worried about the false claim that was going on, for example, that had people believing that if you got $750 in
right.
immediate help, that you were never going to get anything else. You know, what if somebody hears that, they believe it, and then they don't apply for more aid that they could absolutely qualify for? So, you know, there are real costs and real consequences to that misinformation. But I also want to say, for the most part, we've seen a lot of responsible actors on both sides of the aisle saying that there's no place for that misinformation. I've been on the phone with Senator. I was talking to Senator Rubio and in touch with Senator Rubio and talking to Senator Scott and talking to mayors, governors of the states impacted by Helene. You would never know from the conversations we're having which ones were Republicans and which ones were Democrats. When I was talking to the FDOT secretary, you would never know that his boss and my boss belonged to opposite political parties. Right now, you got a lot of people pulling together, working to get the job done for people, regardless of how you voted, just based on what you need.
Well, Donald Trump said that about North Carolina. Republicans not getting help, Democrats getting help. That was Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think that's really unfortunate because it's just not true. Look, we've got thousands of people in all of the areas that have been affected, and that's just the federal response alone. And, whether we're talking about somebody from the military who's been deployed to help, or somebody from our Federal Highway Administration, they're not checking whether they're in a red county or a blue county. They're checking what's going on with the bridges and who needs comms help and what the immediate needs are and how we can be helpful. So look, I get it's October. I get there's a lot of politics going on, but what has inspired me is to see so many people working together across different lines, including the state, federal, county lines that are out there, tearing down barriers, getting rid of red tape, because everybody has a job to do.
Well, all right, Secretary, very good seeing you again. Pete Buttigieg. Just want to allude to something that Transportation Secretary kindly pointed out on these monies that you get from FEMA. That $750 was money up front for people who can't access ATM machines, that kind of thing. So it wasn't just a one-shot, that's it. It's a way for people to get hands on cash they desperately need, not the only money they will ever get or hope to get. But that kind of misinformation gets out there. And whether it's perpetrated by a politician or someone you think is of someone of note and authority, it is wrong, and it is bull, and it cannot be tolerated. We'll have more to this.
So yeah, listen, in the absence of Chris Wallace and Shep Smith, who Shep Smith left Fox, I think it was like 2016 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was early in the Trump era as we know it. And then Chris Wallace left in 2022. Brett Baier, who was the last serious mainstream journalist at Fox, he has regressed, he has devolved, he has corroded, he's been corrupted by the network. Neil Cavuto has tried to step up into that void. Again, relatively conservative, but he's called Donald Trump out before for his blatant lies. And it seems like he has genuine care for this country and for facts. Now, again, he didn't specifically mention Fox. which would probably be bad for his career, I suppose. But Fox, his network, has signal boosted this dis and misinformation, as they did, quite frankly, the 2020 election lies, which forced them ultimately to pay nearly $800 million in a defamation settlement. Fox has not learned its lessons at all. And so Neil Cavuto is one voice screaming or shouting out against this cacophony of disinformation, this wall of noise coming from his co-host. But at least somebody other than Jessica Tarlov is calling it out. This disinformation, this misinformation from Trump, MAGA Republicans, and right-wing news networks is incredibly disgusting. It's incredibly dangerous. It should be relentlessly called out. It should be a scandal. Quite frankly, it's disqualifying. Any politician engaging in this sort of blatant, dishonest rhetoric, I mean, in a more rational world, would lose their jobs. They would never again hold public office. But unfortunately, we don't live in a rational world. And speaking of which, I want to play you a clip from another network in which dis and misinformation about Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton is brought up. And I want you to hear how the gentleman here, who is the conservative analyst, how he justifies Donald Trump, MAGA Republicans spreading dis and misinformation. And just note the contrast between Neil Cavuto and this guy.
Guys, hang on a second.
You know it's different, Mark.
I
blame mayors for
Hold on a second. This is not what we're talking about. It's really just not. I mean, actually, it's actually not that hard to figure out. Trump says that they are not getting help in Republican areas. That is just false. It's just false.
And you can prove it with
not
evidence.
An opinion. It's just a provably false thing.
Well,
so let's just agree.
Trump is lying.
Can we agree?
I mean, he's lying.
Can we agree that that's a lie?
I would say, what do the people think?
Okay.
Ask
No,
them.
Hang on, just one second.
This is a lot like the economic argument we always have. Inflation's down. I don't feel that way.
Mark, hold on. Are people in Republican areas getting help from the government right now? Yes
State,
or no?
federal, local, yes.
Okay, so then if you tell me that it's true that they're getting help, but people feel like they're not, is it important for you to repeat the feeling that is not actually true? Or is it important to repeat
no, if you are a victim of that storm and you don't feel like you've gotten enough support or help, that's a real thing to be able to say and to run on. Trump
is running on a lie that people are not getting help because they are Republicans. That's not true.
But also they feel that they're not getting help because they're being told by their president that they're not getting help.
The propaganda machine.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a big...
Yeah, so that response there again, that should be disqualifying. CNN should never have that guy on again. Listen, I think it's important to have people on of differing views. I genuinely believe that. But imagine you were hiring a math teacher and you're like, hey, 2 + 2 is 4, right? Well, maybe, but I feel it's 5. And so I think I'm going to teach that it's 5, or I'm not going to correct people who feel that 2 + 2 is 5. Would you hire that person as a math teacher? You'd be like, no, thank you. It's the same thing. If this guy wanted to say, hey, listen, it is not true that the Biden-Harris administration is refusing to help Republicans, that is a lie to suggest otherwise. However, people feel this way, and that is something that the Biden-Harris administration need to address. That would still be kind of, again, for the reasons that Brian Stelter and Politics Girl, whose real name escapes me, but the blonde in the ponytail at the end, she's amazing. She pointed out, like, hey, a huge reason that they feel this way is because they're being told this by their cult leader. So let's just accept all of that. But at the very least, he could acknowledge that the facts are facts and lies are lies. And if he wants to say, hey, listen, there's a political consequence for Democrats for the efficacy of these lies that MAGA is telling, and we have to deal with that, that's one thing. But instead, he's like, well, listen, okay, this is how people feel. And, we don't have an obligation to say that what they feel is not true. We just have an obligation to say that what you feel is a fact, because how you feel is a fact about how you feel. What? What are you talking about? This is why this dis and misinformation continues to spread, is because MAGA Republicans don't have the courage to call a lie for what it is. Pretty pathetic stuff. Good on Neil Cavuto for calling it out. Bad on this CNN loser my feelings don't care about your facts. Pretty pathetic and dangerous stuff. These people are such losers. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.